Hey guys, and welcome back to Minecraft. Today I am going to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes development of my new JLevator. And this is the testing world I started this project in. So as you can see, there are many different broken versions here. And I pretty much started playing Minecraft and right away had the idea to build such an elevator now with the honey blocks. Unfortunately, though, I hadn't really played the game for a long time, and so I didn't know many new cool redstone features, which I learned over the time. So that's why this elevator in the end actually looks quite different from the initial attempts. And here we can see one of such initial attempts where there is, for example, this cool wiring. I might make a separate tutorial video about this. This is a tileable up and downwards signal line, which has the advantage that each segment you can send a signal downwards or upwards and they can cross each other. So, for example, the downwards going signal here will just cross through this observer here with the piston, and from the side you can feed in another signal which you can send both up and if you want to also down by just feeding it in later. It's quite handy from certain contraptions, and I was using this as a bus system for signal transmission, but in the later version I am using bubble columns and cobblestone walls, which are instant and also actually much cooler. So let's actually get to the final result here and show you how it's working. So let's just give it a quick test ride for people who haven't seen the video. So first of all, you need to call the elevator. So while calling, this doesn't actually influence it. You just call it by pressing this button. The indicator light tells you that it's actually coming. And this is the selection panel where you select the floor. And I don't know, I guess it was probably up on the top, so it's taking a moment to come down. Let's see if you can see the elevator somewhere. Ah, there it comes. And then you can just select the floor by right-clicking this arrow and press the button again in order for it to go there. Yeah. The nice thing is that it's also spam-proof and everything, but I showed this in the showcase video. And the question here is now, how does it work? So first of all, uh, I had the idea of this clutch-based piston layout where, let me just get a block here. The blocks which are being moved are not actually pushed up by a piston that is below them, but just always from the side. And that's why you can't use slime blocks directly. So, for example, this segment of pistons fires up, and this one moves downwards. And so the blocks are grabbed by the next section and moved upwards further. And this means that there is no gap in between the movements, and you can move it upwards at the piston speed. I can show this again, but just running this in slow motion here. So I have the tick speed game speed mod by I forgot his name, but you can see the description. The author of this, the really cool mod, because it not only slows down the game, it also can I now fly? Yes. It also makes smooth animations possible, so you can better see what's actually going on. Okay, I'm going to spectator now. Ah, God, I still can't type. Okay, so let's look at the netherite blocks. As you can see, they are continuously moving upwards, and that is because they are always grabbed. For example, the left one is always grabbed by the honey blocks, and then moved upwards without any piston ever just moving below this block and pushing it directly. And this setup enables us to just, without zero ticks, move the elevator very, very quickly. Unfortunately, though, we already are on the top floor. It means that we can use less blocks to actually move the cabin, or less blocks for the cabin, because we already have to move. Let's speed up the game again. In this case, 4 additional blocks. So the cabin itself cannot contain 12 blocks, but just only 8 each section. And this is also another problem, because if you just count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have actually 9 blocks here, and that's why I need to send in 2 signals. So the bottom and the top netherite blocks are actually each separately moved by a separate signal going through this. And so each of when it's moving upwards, the bottom blocks are pushing everything else except the top blocks, and if it's moving downwards, the top blocks push everything except the bottom blocks, which are moving ahead, basically. And this was the only clean setup I could come up with that was using this sliding clutch design with no pistons pushing it actually from below. But I tried many different versions of it, and this was the cleanest looking I came up with. Unfortunately, initially I wanted a 2x2 cabin. It wasn't possible with this design. You can, of course, make it 2x2 if you remove the ceiling and then attach slime and honey like this. But first of all, then you have visible slime and honey, and secondly, then you actually can see the mechanics going on from the ceiling, which I decided wouldn't look as good as this one. So that's why the cabin is a little smaller. Technically, you could just actually replace the door and every of these front glass panels with glass panes, and then you have additional half a meter of space, or almost half a meter, which would allow you to, for example, use horses. And now let's take a look at the back part here. And you can see there are 3 rows of pistons, the left ones, the right ones, and the middle ones. And since the left and the right ones are at the same height, they have to have the same timing, while the middle ones actually have to have the exact opposite timing. So it's kind of poses a problem, because that would mean that you would somehow have to run wires if you just had one timing source from left to right and separate wires in the middle. So instead, each of the rows has a separate timing system. So you can see there are these upwards facing observers, and they actually transmit the signal upwards. And it's a nice setup where you can. I don't have a crossing here on in spectator mode, which kind of sucks. Hello, creative, please. Now, so with this observer is feeding into this block, then we have the 2-tick delay of the repeater, and the additional 1 tick of the observer means that there are 3 redstone ticks every 2 meters. So 1.5 redstone ticks, or 3 game ticks per meter, which is exactly 6.6 meters per second, or the piston movement speed. And so we have 3 upwards moving lines. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and the third one is over here. And 3 downward moving signal lines. This one, and the last one is somehow here, and you can hardly see it. And they are controlling the left, middle, and right piston layout. And each of those lines has to actually fire, and that's why I have this layout. It's symmetrical, so it's the same firing pattern upwards and downwards, which is really nice. And so first, if you want to move upwards, for example, you have to first push the piston down, so it's the opposite direction, and then it pulls back the actual elevator with it, and then the other piston fires and pushes another block. So each of these segments always moving 2 blocks, as you can probably tell from this. So for example, this honey block, it basically starts grabbing the block from here and moves it 2 blocks up. And the next one also moves it 2 blocks up. Each of them moves it 2 blocks up, and they're always starting from the middle. So that's why they first of all need to offset their position and then move. But this makes the synchronization and the actual redstone much easier than just to move it directly. And so that's why there are these pistons here. They basically make sure that the observer here, for example, when going downwards, this piston fires twice, first directly, and then the bottom one fires, and then the top one fires again. And it's just timed such that due to the piston itself limiting this when the second piston can extend, Although I'm just using redstone repeaters, I can actually time it to extend after 3 game ticks. Yeah, which is kind of nice. And then the question arises, how do you actually stop the elevator at a certain floor? And you can see these color-coded blocks here. It's just pistons that are grabbing the blocks to stop it at a certain floor. Unfortunately, though, we have a slight problem when we look at the cabin again. Because if I want to stop it at a certain floor, let's say at 8th floor, and it's moving downwards, then the bottom netherite blocks, since we have 2 signals, actually have to stop after we reach the floor, and the top ones have to stop before we even reach the floor. So we just have to stop the signal at the right moment, but we can't just block off the signal beforehand, because then the top netherite blocks will already get stuck. So we basically have to wait until the elevator is in the right position and then immediately cut off the signal. And that's what's happening in the blue blocks. So let's just pick one example floor, maybe this one. So if the composter here is moved to the side, which means that's the signal saying stop the elevator when it arrives at this floor. So it's basically a memory cell that just saves where the elevator should go to. And when the composter is moved to the right, then the redstone signal can cross here and go to the pistons here, which are quickly grabbing off the blocks so that the signal stops. And the nice thing again is that it's symmetrical. So no matter whether the elevator is moving upwards or downwards, this works both ways with the same setup, because it's just quickly cutting off the signal below and above the position of the elevator, so it can't travel any further. And yeah, it's just timed in a way that it's whenever the signal reaches the middle, which is exactly the middle of the floor, as you can see. It's just exactly at the middle. When the signal arrives here, then the bottom and the top signal lines are cut off so that the elevator doesn't move any further. Yeah, saying, as I said, moving both ways. And then eventually you need to reset this block here and also move this block here, which is a copy memory cell stating that the elevator is here, which is different from this one, which says that the elevator is supposed to go here. And that's why after the elevator arrived, this one is getting resetted because it's already there. But this memory cell gets moved to the left, stating that the elevator is here. And that activates the door and also the ding sound. Now, pressing this button here also obviously has 2 different possible actions. If the elevator is at the floor where you are currently at, that means it's this memory cell here is on the left position. The signal goes onto this side and goes into 2 signal lines simultaneously. The left one here is a decoder that decodes the signal from the selector panel and just triggers one of these trapdoors. And you can see there are 9 floors, and there's always a gap in each floor. That is the floor itself, because you can't go to the floor itself. So, for example, this first trapdoor is floor 9, then 8, and then the 7th floor is the one we are currently on, and 6, and so on. So if one of these trapdoors moves, it actually attaches to the Cobblewall. I don't want to trigger it now because that might break the elevator. So you can probably imagine that it looks like this. And this actually triggers the whole row of Cobblewalls to change their look. Let me actually demonstrate it over there. So need to go to creative again. A trapdoor. Wooden one works too. So if I flip this over, as you can see, the whole line is changing. I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but this is instant vertical wire because you can detect this change of the Cobblewall with an observer at the bottom. And that's what it's doing. And let's go back to our floor here, 7th one. So this is saying, okay, we need the elevator to go to, let's say, the 5th floor. But we also need to know where the elevator started from. That's why this other line is going, because the bottom computing unit actually gives off the starting signal. It's not directly fed into this tape here from the floor, because that would cause spam protection problems when several floors at the same time want to start or call the elevator. So that's why the signal is first moved downwards, and then this processing unit logs any further inputs when an input is processed, and then it sends back the actual signal to start the elevator back up using the water columns. And we also have the additional option. If the elevator is not on the floor we're currently in, then it's at the right position like it's right now. And then we just need to send in, well, that we, for example, this is the 8th floor, that we would like to call the elevator to the 8th floor, which is why this row is additional, because it says, please come here. And then the bottom signal unit, that's also why we need this bottom processing unit, because the floor itself just says, hey, I need the elevator, but doesn't know where the elevator is. And this floor here actually saves the current position of the elevator. So if, for example, it's at the 9th floor at the moment, so that means that if the signal is arriving, it checks which floor the elevator is at, and basically sends a signal going from that floor to the current floor. Now that also means that we have to calculate whether to move the elevator upwards or downwards, and that's simply done by actually using the comparator for the intended purpose. We simply see if the signal strength of the floor it's currently at is larger than the signal strength of the floor it's supposed to go. And depending on that, we either send the signal in the upward signal tape or in the downward signal, not tape, but signal line. There's lots of additional complexity here. So for example, if you actually select the floor, we have to detect it and then also quickly read out whether the floor we selected is larger or smaller than the floor we're currently in. It's also again done, it's over here, using this comparator here, which detects whether the floor is larger or smaller. And then depending on that, we send this travel signal here. And the thing is, we don't have to just send in a signal. We have to send in a signal from the floor where we started, so where we press the button. So that's why these golden blocks here pretty much decide either send it upwards or downwards. And then also the row here is saying which floor. And then depending on that, we send on one of these bubble columns a signal. So they pretty much say move, start or inject a upwards going signal on the 7th floor, or inject a downwards going signal on the 5th floor, for example. Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of complicated actually, but in the end, I think it's pretty cool nevertheless. So I'm not too sure if you're interested in all the details, but basically the same here applies to the bottom backside. This bubble column here just says where the elevator should stop, and it connects to this composer for each floor, and just says, well, move the composer to the right so that the elevator stops at this floor. And then this also, when the elevator actually arrived, it's not only resetting this memory cell. And one important thing happens, it's moving this trapdoor here, which again triggers this Cobblewall, and at the bottom unlocks the signal processing unit so that new inputs can be received. Yeah. In total, it's a bit overkill, I know, and it's probably could have been more compact, but I eventually gave up trying to make it super compact because I figured that would actually just, increase development time. Just building it and then afterwards trying to make it a little bit more compact means that it's a bit more spacious, of course, but at least it's working, and it's still rather compact in my opinion, and it's is been the first of this kind of elevator as far as I know. So yeah, that's it. Thanks guys for watching, and if you have any further questions, let me know. Maybe some more additional notes actually. You can spread out the floors further, so this is the minimum distance of 60 meters. If I go to creative mode, I can show it better. So each floor starts at these green blocks here. So basically this is the starting height of a floor, and obviously the end is at this height. But you can also, like this is 4 blocks wide, so you could just leave a 4-block high gap and copy one of these signal sections in between to increase the gap between floors, and so make the elevator even taller without adding floors or just making the floors at different heights if you know or if you need it. And yeah, I'm not going to make a tutorial for this one. It's just way too big. But I would recommend you to actually download and install Lightmatica if you want to build it, which gives you a is just transparent schematic where you can just gather resources and then just build it block by block without having to look at a second screen. For smaller contraptions, I'm always going to make videos from now on, but this is just way too much effort, and I think it's probably better if you just take a look at it in survival and then use some of these tools um, to build it yourself. And then you will also learn a lot more about how the individual parts function and work together. And of course, I'm always open for suggestions. Like if anyone has a good idea or wants to improve on this, just do it and show me what you have come up with. And yeah, I'm planning to make some smaller videos now as well, showcasing some additional little quirks I found. And then see you in the next video, hopefully. So goodbye, everybody, and have fun playing the game.